Hi everyone, welcome to June highlights from the Waterwise demonstration garden. Thank you so much for your time tonight joining us to learn all about the amazing plants that are in full bloom right now. So my name is Catherine Moravec and I'm a senior water conservation specialist at Colorado Springs Utilities, and we're very proud to offer you these programs and information to help you use water wisely. So here's what we're going to be talking about tonight. First, I just want to give you a little information about visiting the garden if you'd like to come and join us in person and see what everything looks like in real life. Second, I want to go through 12 of the top performing plants from kind of late May into early June. You know, here at the Waterwise demonstration garden, we have roughly 400 different types of plants. So in many of our webinars, we just scratch the surface of the amazing plants that grow here and offer all these amazing benefits. So what I want to do tonight is just take a little bit deeper dive into a few of the plants that we haven't discussed so far this spring, so that you can kind of learn about some of the amazing plants that are here. Then I want to share with you 3 tips for watering during hot, dry periods. You know, we've been in this heat wave, and I just want to share with you some tips to be able to survive this period, and then share with you a few resources that you can utilize from here on out to help you find great plants for your landscape. So if you haven't been to the Waterwise demonstration garden before, we have 2 gardens. Our primary garden is located at 2855 Mesa Road. It's surrounding our Conservation and Environmental Center, and it's a great place to come visit, and very close to Coronado High School. We have a much smaller demonstration garden located right in front of the Cottonwood Creek Recreation Center at 3920 Dublin Boulevard. So if you happen to be kind of in the northeast area of town, it's worth spending 15 minutes to drop by that garden and see what's blooming. Both of these gardens are open during daylight hours any day of the year. They're free and open to the public to visit. And I would certainly encourage you to visit these gardens throughout the year, because they have been planned with year-long interest in mind. So they're a really great resource for you. Here at the Mesa Garden at 2855 Mesa Road, we have about 2 acres of demonstration gardens and roughly 300 to 350 different plant types. This particular garden was installed in 1990 to 1991. So we are coming up on our 30th anniversary of learning about Waterwise landscaping. So there were some older sections of the garden that kind of showcase some of the more traditional or older ideas about Waterwise landscaping. And we work on renovating these areas kind of on an 8 to 10 year cycle. And we also have our Waterwise Neighborhood, which showcases 5 model front yards that were installed in 2015 and 16. Now, if you happen to be available to visit the Cottonwood Creek Garden, that was installed in 2006. It's a much smaller garden and it's not staffed, so therefore it gets a lot less maintenance. So you can see that these are really tough surviving plants that are planted in this location. And we get out there about once a month to do maintenance. So if you're looking for a low maintenance landscape, that can be a really good test so you can see how these plants perform with that level of maintenance. So here at the Waterwise demonstration garden, we spend a lot of time experimenting and testing plants. So for many years, we have been a partner garden with the Plant Select program, as well as Denver Botanic Gardens. And so with both of these programs, we get annual shipments of plants from very smart horticulturists who are trying new things, and they give us plants to test. So we plant them in various locations, in different water zones, and after we plant them, we really don't pay much attention to them. So the plants that succeed are very tough. They have to be very beautiful, they have to be tough, they have to be low maintenance, and they have to be resilient to our weather. So we are looking to find the best plants that will grow throughout the Pikes Peak region with lower inputs so that we can be more sustainable in our community. So that's our goal, and we've been at it for a while. So let's jump right into our top 12 plants that I want to share with you from the month of May and June. So we're using the title June highlights from the demonstration garden kind of loosely, because we're going to look towards this past, maybe 3 to 4 weeks, and see if we can find some really good plants. So the first plant I want to talk to you about is called Granita Raspberry Ice Plant. So this is a Delosperma. Many of you know ice plants are originally from South Africa, and we've had quite a few horticulturists, including Panayotis Colitis, who has gone to South Africa and picked out really great cultivars and brought them back to Colorado. Then they've been hybridized and developed over a long period of time. So the more traditional ice plants have a bright yellow flower. When I started working in landscaping in the 1990s, that was the common ice plant. But this is a really fantastic bright pink ice plant with these iridescent flowers that are really, really shiny and really amazing. So this particular ground cover has these succulent leaves that can swell and shrink with water. So they definitely are very xeric. It's a very short ground cover, so it's only about 1 to 2 inches tall, but one individual plant can be about 1 foot wide. So if you want to plant it in an area where you kind of want it to fill in, then I would certainly think about 1 foot spacings, because that's about how far an individual plant will spread. So this is a really great showstopper, and my coworker Lisa Pace planted this ice plant right along the entry along Mesa Road. So I will show you an even better picture of it in just a minute. But what I want to do prior to that is talk about Colorado Gold Gazania. Colorado Gold Gazania is a perennial flower that comes back year after year, and it has these bright yellow flowers that are about 2 to 2.5 inches across in diameter, so they're quite big, and they flower above these kind of linear leaves. That's why it has this name called Gazania linearis. So if you like gazanias that you buy and plant as annuals, maybe this is something you would like to explore as a substitute for that. This particular plant grows to be about 4 to 6 inches tall, and then can also be about 1 foot wide. This has been a really good plant for us here at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden, because we have these certain locations where we couldn't get anything to grow. They were right next to a pathway and with heavy clay soil. And once we actually planted Colorado Gold Gazania, that plant took off. Now this will spread by seed kind of slowly, so if you want it to fill in an area, you can certainly let those seedlings grow. Otherwise, they're really easy to pull out because they all grow from a central taproot. So if you've got a good weeding tool, then you can definitely get these out easily. Now some people look at this plant and think it looks a little bit like dandelions. And I will say that that is true, but what I find is many people actually really like the way that dandelions look. So maybe this is a great addition to your landscape. What I wanted to show you here is that my coworker Lisa planted these two plants together right at the base of the facility sign to enter into the Waterwise Garden parking lot. And I don't know that I would have ever planted bright yellow and bright pink together myself. But she was really bold and went ahead and went with that combination, and it is really amazing. It is eye-catching, it's low, it's very water-wise, and it's bright, bright flowers. So if you have an area of your yard or maybe a landscaped area where you typically plant annual flowers to kind of have a nice ground cover of color throughout the summer, this can be a fantastic replacement for that type of planting and come back year after year after year, so you don't have to replant. So certainly something to consider. It's been a great combination for us if you like pink and yellow together and really bright colors, which many of us do. So the second plant that I want to talk about is peonies. Now peonies are one of those plants that I would think of as a very traditional garden plant. You know, many of our grandmothers and grandfathers have peonies in their gardens. And you know, they're known for these very large multi-petaled flowers that can be 3 to 6 inches in diameter. So they're fantastic, very, very eye-catching. Most peonies tend to be about 2 feet tall and wide. But what we have found here at the Waterwise demonstration garden, and as I've gone around town and looked at gardens that have been neglected for many years, peonies are extremely water-wise and they are survivors. Now if they don't get watered for many years, they might be short, they might be 6 inches tall, but they survive and thrive. Now peonies can be quite expensive. You might pay more than you would for a traditional perennial of the same exact size. But the great thing about peonies is they are extremely long-lived. So you might be able to get a peony to last 80 or 100 years in one location before it actually dies. So that money is well worth it. Now you can purchase peonies as a potted plant that you plant during the growing season, or you can also just get the portion of the root, the rhizomes, mailed to you as a dormant plant, and you can plant those and both will work just fine. There are 2 cultivars of traditional peonies that have worked really well at the Waterwise demonstration garden. One is called Bowl of Beauty, and this is a fantastic plant. I really love it because when it opens, it has these light pink petals, and as it starts to open, it has these really light lemon yellow stamens. I think those are stamens in there, or some other plant part of the flower that I can't remember, but what a beautiful contrast. And what I love about Bowl of Beauty is that many peonies will flop because the flower heads are so heavy. Bowl of Beauty doesn't have that characteristic. It is nice and sturdy and upright. So once it flowers, you get to enjoy those flowers and you don't have to stake it up. So that's been a fantastic one. Another one that's been really good for us is called Coral Sunset. Now, when this is in the bud form, the bud is kind of a dark to medium pink, and you can see that it's got some beautiful yellow striations on the petals. As this opens up and matures, it becomes kind of a lemon yellow color. So you get this variation in color throughout the year, or throughout the flowering period, not throughout the year, but throughout the flowering period. And it's really attractive because some of those flowers will still be in the bud form while others are turning to kind of this light yellow color. And you can get this variation throughout the blooms that are available on the plants. I think that's why it's called Coral Sunset, is because it's got that variation from kind of pink to light yellow. Now, both of these peonies are traditional herbaceous peony, meaning that the leaves will die back to ground level in the fall. But they come back every year and really are a delight in late May and June when they bloom. Now, I want to show you this picture of this garden in Kissing Camels because I want to show you how beautiful peonies are when they're not in bloom. And what I'm going to show you is right here. This particular plant is just the leaves of a peony. And to me, it is just so beautiful because it gives you that larger leaf texture. And if you plant that next to maybe a fine leaf shrub like this, maybe that's a broom, or maybe you even plant it with an evergreen shrub like a mugo pine or a spirea that's got a more lemon colored set of leaves. What a beautiful contrast that can make. So you get the flowers for a week or 2 if you're lucky, but I love the way that peonies look when they're not in flower. So what a great thing to do. Now, we have also experimented a little bit with what are called Itopianis. Now, Dr. Ito was a horticulturist that for many years tried to hybridize tree peonies with herbaceous peonies to get the best of both worlds. Well, Dr. Ito was actually successful, but he died before he actually saw the results of his work. So there's this line of hybridized peonies called Itopianis after his last name. So they are hybrids of tree peonies and herbaceous peonies. They tend to be a lot more shrub-like. So when an herbaceous peony blooms, it has its leaves down below, and then you get these flowers sticking up on these stronger stalks. This Ito peony has much shorter flowering stalks, so these large, beautiful peony-like flowers are held much closer to the leaves. And when these plants are in bloom, they are just so amazing. They almost look like those tissue paper flowers that you might have made as a kid. And they're just fantastic with those yellow stamens. These look really nice when they're out of bloom because those leaves are so dense and so round and in a beautiful mound. This particular Itopiani is called Morning Lilac, and it's really a very fuchsia color, kind of a bright, bright pink. And so if you like tropical colors, this is a really great one. But there are many different hybrids of Itopianis that come in a wide variety of colors. Now these plants are expensive. So if you're gonna go and buy an Itopiani, it's gonna run you $60, $75, but they are definitely worth it because they can really be that amazing showcase signature plant in your landscape. All right, another plant that I'd like to move on to right now is called Mongolian Bell's Clematis. Now this is not a native plant, it's actually from Mongolia, but it is a perennial flower. And when it has a good year, it is really attractive. This year has been a great year for Mongolian Bell's Clematis. This is a particular plant that's growing at our Cottonwood Creek demonstration garden. And it's right in this little central rock garden at the location, and it's really had a beautiful year. It grows up as these leaves that are maybe about 2 or 3 inches long, kind of in these upright stems, and then you have all of these downward facing buds, and then they open up into these kind of pendant flowers that are really, really attractive. Now Mongolian Bell's Clematis will come in blue shades, lavender, white, and pink. And in fact, if you have the chance to go visit Denver Botanic Gardens, they have a section in their step garden, I believe, that has a hillside with all of these different Mongolian Bell's Clematis planted in this wide variety of colors, and it's really attractive. Now, one of the downsides of Mongolian Bell's Clematis is that oftentimes it doesn't look like this, it actually looks like it's flopping outward. And I think it just had a really good year because of the cooler weather and maybe the extra moisture, and it's just really upright. Now, if it does flop after it flowers, one thing you can do is just cut the whole entire plant to the ground, and it will regrow in a much more upright, kind of smaller stature, and it can rebloom after you cut it back to ground level. So that can be really nice. Another plant that I'd like to talk about now is called Shangri-La Sage. Now this is another Plant Select selection. Plant Select is a cooperative effort between Denver Botanic Gardens, the Green Industries of Colorado, and Colorado State University. And they have this committee of people that meets together and discusses all the amazing potential plants that they could release into the Colorado market. And when they come up with the agreed upon plants, that it takes a while for them to agree on them because they're very passionate horticulturists, but when they agree on the ones that they're going to promote, they put out information related to these plants. And it's a fantastic way to find out about great plants that are kind of new on the market and really exciting, especially if you like new releases. So Plant Select is not really a production or a nursery system, it's more of a plant promotion. And so they rely on the garden centers and nurseries within the state to sell these plants. So not all of them are Waterwise, and sometimes you can't find all of them available for sale, but they're really worth finding if you have the chance to come across them. So Shangri-La Sage is one that was released a few years ago, and we have it planted at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden in an area around our Siloam Stone Plaza. This particular area does not have an irrigation system in the ground. What we do is we hand water this area if we notice the plant starting to wilt. So Shangri-La Sage has these wide fuzzy leaves, and it has done pretty well in this hot, dry location. What I love about Shangri-La Sage is that in May and June, it sends up these spikes of lavender flowers, and they're very unique. This was a chance seedling that someone just happened to discover in their garden, a cross between these two different salvia types. And it just has these amazing flowers. They've got kind of this hood structure up here, and then this kind of fall type of structure here, and this is a little bit spotty. And it starts to bloom down at the very bottom of the stalk, and then as the season progresses, it blooms all the way up to the top. So it really is attractive and nice to see, and it looks very different. So great for a hot, dry location. Great if you like new plants with kind of a unique color and structure. This would be a good one to check out. Every time this plant is in bloom at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden, we get tons of questions about what is that plant. So it's something that definitely is eye-catching. Another plant that I wanted to talk about a little bit is the humble soapweed yucca. You know, yucca is one of those things that my rancher friends often say they would give me all the yucca plants in the world if I would just take them off their hands. And so it's probably something that as Colorado natives, maybe we undervalue a little bit. But what an amazing plant if we just stop and take a look at what it's actually doing. It's got these narrow sword-like leaves that are persistent throughout the year. So you have this kind of evergreen quality that gives you this beautiful architectural structure in the landscape. Now, you don't want to plant yucca any place where you want to get rid of it because it has this incredible taproot that gives yucca its resilience and its extreme drought tolerance. So plant it where you want it because it will be hard to get rid of it should you ever want to remove it. Yucca glauca or soapweed yucca is one of these plants that is native to eastern Colorado. So you'll see it all throughout the Front Range, a little bit in the mountains, but mostly it is a Front Range Colorado plant for us. And to me, it's fantastic. You know, it is definitely one of those plants that if you put it in your landscape, it does not need any supplemental water at all. And in June, it has these amazing spikes of white, light green, or pink flowers. So the flower spikes to me are one of the things that are so amazing about this plant. You know, it has this interesting symbiotic relationship with a particular moth species, which is cool in and of itself. But every time it blooms, it has these velvety petals, and it just is so attractive and so worthwhile to plant in a landscape. Now, I just want to showcase when we have a little bit of moisture, yucca can be this fantastic bloomer. This is a clump of yucca that's between the sidewalk and this fence up on Mesa Road. And look at that spectacular set of flower spikes. I mean, if this was on any other plant, everyone would be rushing to the garden store to pick up one. I think it's just that it's so ubiquitous and so common to see for those of us from Colorado that maybe we don't value it quite as much. But I'm definitely going to find some places in my landscape for soapweed yucca just to take advantage of its amazing architectural qualities and its wonderful flower spikes. Okay, so another plant that I'd like to share with you is Scarlet Hedgehog Cactus. This is another native plant that really occurs throughout Colorado and has these incredible bright red flowers in May or June. Now, the individual flowers don't last for a very long time, but you get these many different blossoms on a clump of Scarlet Hedgehog Cactus. It is a very reliable bloomer, both in pots for us and in the ground. So we have a particular garden here at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden where we've got Scarlet Hedgehog Cactus planted with other succulents. We have agave and cacti and other strains of yucca. But this Scarlet Hedgehog Cactus, to me, the benefit that I see of it is it's nice and compact. It looks great when it's out of bloom. But There are some years when the cacti in our garden don't bloom as prolifically as we would like, especially some of the prickly pear. You know, prickly pear can kind of go either way if it has a good year or a not so great year in terms of all the flowers it's producing. But this scarlet hedgehog cactus is very, very reliable, and the flowers are so intense. We have a clump that someone donated to us and we put in this really nice bronze colored pot. It doesn't receive any irrigation in the pot, but it has survived and thrived in that area. Now, this is something where when we planted this, we didn't know exactly what type of potting media to put in there. So what we did is we took 50% of Fertilome potting mix and we mixed that with volcanic rock that we just bought at a landscape supply yard. We mixed that 50-50, put it in the pot just to give it some extra drainage and extra moisture so it wasn't quite so wet. And that has worked really well for the scarlet hedgehog cactus. Now the actual stems, which are, you know, these structures right here. So cacti are interesting because the spines are actually the modified leaves and the stems are kind of the barrel part. Here, if you find an individual plant, they might be kind of round or they might be sort of upright and cylindrical. It can come in a wide variety of forms, but the flowers tend to be very similar and they just cover the plant. When this is in bloom, my goodness, the native bees, they like to bury themselves in those flowers and hang out for long periods of time, which is just an added bonus and really fun to watch. What I want to show you right here is that this is our this cacti and succulent garden, and we have plants, we have pots with multiple plants in there. Look over here, this is another scarlet hedgehog cactus. How bright that is an eye-catching centerpiece of this garden. And there's another one tucked right over here. And then the other specimen that we have that's much bigger is kind of over in this area way in the back. But a great thing to tuck into a landscape to get bright color in June. All right, let's move on to the next plant. Now this is a plant a large shrub that I'm actually really excited about. I found it at one of our local garden centers, I think last year. It's called Little Leaf Pea Shrub. Or Carrageena Microfila, the cultivar name is Tidy. But I love pea shrubs. Once again, they're not native plants, but they are so well adapted and have been used in reclamation projects for years here in Colorado Springs and the Front Range of Colorado. What I love about pea shrubs is they have really nice kind of airy leaves, and then they bloom yellow in the springtime. But if you can get them nicely pruned as they're growing, they have this fantastic metallic green bark that is such a beautiful asset to the garden in the winter time. I hadn't seen this particular cultivar of pea shrub before, but I bought one for myself and planted it in my landscape, and then I also bought another one for the Waterwise demonstration garden. I am thrilled because both of them are thriving. Now the one at the Waterwise demonstration garden is kind of right next to this not so attractive fence that separates the garden from the water treatment plant. We did put drip irrigation to it, but it doesn't get much attention at all. And it just came into a beautiful set of blooms this spring. Now this shrub will get pretty tall and wide. It can get anywhere from 6 to 10 feet tall by 5 to 7 feet wide. But when it's in bloom, it has these beautiful tubular yellow flowers that are really, really nice. I will say that the one that I planted at my house, I haven't given that plant much attention at all. And it looks very comparable to the one here at the Waterwise demonstration garden. So I'm always looking for very tough, resilient, drought-tolerant plants, and I think this is going to be a really, really good one. So keep an eye out for it. All right, now if you have driven by or visited the Waterwise demonstration garden at all during the end of May or June, you will notice that we have a lot of allium bulbs planted. Now these are called ornamental onions, and these are definitely deer resistant because deer definitely do not like the taste of anything related to onions. And you plant these as bulbs in the fall. Now, one bulb is going to cost you quite a bit of money compared to a daffodil bulb or a tulip bulb, but these are amazing plants once they come into flower. Lisa actually planted a whole bunch of them all along the entryway. So if you see these big globes of purple and white, that is due to Lisa. So in the early spring, they grow as kind of these wide, strappy leaves, and the actual leaves can be quite, the mound of leaves can be quite big in diameter, I'd say, maybe 8 to 10 inches as a clump. And then in June, they send up these really strong stalks with this dome of flowers. It just looks like a fantastic sphere. Now, as the plant starts to bloom, you'll notice in this picture that the leaves are actually starting to turn brown. So they're starting to age here at the tips, and they will turn brown over time. So once these plants are done flowering, then they will actually go dormant. The whole entire flower structure and the leaves will turn brown, and then they just are dormant for the rest of the year. So they're really only active for about 2 months, but they make quite a statement when they are active. So Lisa planted a lot of different cultivars, and I just wanted to showcase a few of the ones that she planted. The first one is called Allium Christophii, which is this one right here. This is located at the garden, kind of when you drive in the front parking lot. There's a center plant bed that has Santa Fe phlox and catmint and an ornamental grass and this particular allium. It's not very tall. I would say it's maybe 12 inches in height, but it has these beautiful star-like flowers. It's much more open and airy compared to some of the other cultivars out there. So definitely something, if you like kind of an informal, looser structure with the star-like flowers, Allium Christophii is a good one. And the nice thing about some of these allium flowers is that once they dry out, a lot of people will clip off the flower stem with the head of flowers, and they'll spray paint it and make all sorts of art projects out of that. So definitely take that into consideration. Now, this one right here in front of the wooden sign along Mesa Road, this is called Pinball Wizard. So this, for some reason, I kind of like this one the best out of the 3 purple alliums that she chose. I just like its structure. It seems really sturdy. It's got healthy leaves, and the flower heads are really amazing. Ambassador is one that she planted towards the entry that's very tall. So if you need to get your allium spheres maybe up 18 inches to 2 feet, that would be the one that I would recommend to you. And I believe that this one right here on the lower left, that is Ambassador. Now there's another one called Globemaster, and Globemaster is famous for being the hugest sphere out of all of the cultivars. So if you just want that huge statement, really large ball, that's the one to choose. It's a little bit shorter than Ambassador, but definitely makes a statement. And then there's this other little allium that she planted right here, which is probably only about 4 inches tall, Ivory Queen. And it's this really cute little puff ball that is kind of dainty, and she kind of planted them throughout different perennials. And it's just a cute little different textured bulb that will disappear in about a month. All right, so another shrub I'd like to share with you is Blue Velvet Honeysuckle. This is a really large shrub. And I like this particular plant because it is kind of one of those ones that borders on a shrub slash tree. If you don't do anything to prune it up, it will definitely grow like a big, massive shrub that's kind of irregular in habit. But when they are pruned up a little bit and shaped, what a beautiful, beautiful shrub. So it has this really tiny set of small leaves. This is why it's called Blue Velvet. And then it has these light pink flowers in spring. This is in bloom right now here at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden, and it is really, really amazing. And yes, the flowers are fragrant when they are in bloom here in early June. It is really something to see. Now, as I mentioned, it does have a very kind of irregular habit. So it's something that I would recommend shaping through like selective pruning. But I love this plant because it is so resilient to our extreme weather. You know, it looks like this every single year, whether it's hot and dry, whether it's cool and moist, whether we've just had a massive hailstorm. This plant is one of those really, really tough beauties. When it's out of bloom, it still looks really attractive because you've got all these little blue leaves that are covering the whole entire shrub. So this is one that I've thought for many years I would plant in my own landscape. I just need to get the right spot. And because I've really admired it for many, many years. This is an interesting plant that was introduced by the Plant Select program, well, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's called curly leaf sea kale. This is a European plant that is perennial, and it is supposedly edible. I have not tried eating it myself, but it is something that you could certainly try. It is definitely deer resistant. And this particular plant seems to be a very reliable bloomer for us. So we have had it for quite a while, and it's kind of seeded around, and you get these beautiful clumps of the leaves, first of all, in the spring, because it has these waxy, curly blue leaves that are quite succulent. And then starting sometime between April and May, this plant will send up these clusters of white flowers. Now they last for quite a while because the little individual flowers will bloom at different times. But what a great filler plant when you just are looking for that early spring bloom. It doesn't seem to be that susceptible to strange spring weather. So many of our early spring bloomers here at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden, you know, if we get a crazy hailstorm or a late snowstorm, then those plants will kind of be knocked out and we just have to wait for a few weeks until the next thing blooms. But this has been very reliable. And I will say that those leaves are really, really attractive. Sometimes it's hard for us in Colorado to get plants that have large leaves to look good because so many times they get damaged by hail. This is one that, you know, does pretty well, and if it gets damaged by hail, then you just cut the leaves off and it'll continue to regrow. It is about 2 feet tall and wide, and those are the clusters of white flowers. So it's really, really attractive. And this is a picture of when it's in bloom, and you can see that we've got these beautiful mounds of it. The leaves are great contrast with the flower sprays, and then with catmint, it looks really nice. In the back here is yellow horned poppy that has the orange flowers in bloom right here. And these have a similar leaf color, so kind of a blue, powdery blue-green. In addition, this is blue stem joint fir right here, which is a shrub that looks like this throughout the year. So it's not really evergreen, but it's just doesn't have any leaves at all. So it's kind of an interesting shrub. But it looks really neat with the wider curly leaves of the curly leaf sea kale put up against the blue stem joint fir. And it's kind of become this kind of bluish themed area of the garden that is just really attractive. So for those of you looking for a small deciduous tree, I do want to mention that the thornless cockspur hawthorn is one to consider. It has had a really amazing year this year as well throughout the Pikes Peak region. So this is a small deciduous tree. It has a very broad habit. It can get to be 20 to 30 feet tall and wide, although I would say most of the trees that I've seen probably don't reach the 30 feet range. They're more in the 20 feet range. But a tough deciduous tree. This particular tree is in the Peregrine area, and it just is really happy as a landscape plant in the front yard or in the backyard or wherever it might be. But it's just really great solid tree and very commercially available. Some of the most amazing trees, sometimes you can't purchase them because they're so hard to find. And this one you can find at virtually every tree nursery in town. This is a picture that I took just this week. It does have this sort of umbrella broad habit, so you have to make sure that you have space for that type of spread. but it has these amazing glossy green leaves that look fantastic throughout the year. In fact, this is a tree that used to be planted a whole lot along Platte Avenue. And you could drive throughout that area in drought years and see these little trees with these glossy green leaves, and you know that it's a really tough plant when it's looking like that. So it does get covered with these white clusters of flowers in June that transition into kind of a dull red fruit in the fall. So this is something that is definitely a benefit because you get the multi-season interest. And it's really a beautiful plant. Now, I will say that sometimes the fragrance of hawthorns can be a little questionable, meaning that the flowers are very beautiful, the tree is very beautiful. The fragrance of the flowers may not be exactly what you would put in a perfume if you would choose to make some, but it's kind of interesting. So maybe not one to set right by your front door or right by your back patio, maybe space it a little bit away, or just don't sit there when it's in flower, and enjoy its wonderful attributes other times of the year. But many of the hawthorns are wonderful landscape trees, and this is only one that we're showcasing today. Before you go, I do want to mention that if we do experience these dramatic heat waves, keep these 3 top watering tips in mind. First of all, continue to water regularly. So now that the Waterwise rules are in effect, you can water up to 3 days per week with your sprinklers. You can water with drip irrigation and hand watering at any time. But if you're using your sprinklers, you can do it up to 3 days per week, and you can choose any days you like. Just water with your sprinklers before 10 a.m. or after 6 p.m. Now, even though you may see some brown spots in your lawn or some temporary wilting on your landscape plants, 3 days per week should be plenty of water to sustain their long-term health before cooler weather returns. So even though you might see some temporary stresses, don't worry about that. Just continue to water regularly. I do want to mention too that sometimes it's really tempting if you start to see drought stress pop up to just increase the amount of time that you're watering. Before you do that, make sure you do a sprinkler check. Turn on your sprinkler system and see how it's operating. Look for clogged nozzles or leaks or branches blocking the spray, or maybe you have a sprinkler that's actually turned the wrong direction. Make any needed repairs and you may see your landscape health just really improve without having to water longer. So certainly take that into account. Now, if neither of those methods work for you and you still have stubborn brown spots or stubborn plants that just show a lot of wilting, that's when you want to supplement with hand watering. So with the Waterwise rules, as long as you're using a hose with a watering wand with a shutoff nozzle, you can hand water as needed. Just don't overdo it because, you know, we live in a semi-arid climate where water is a precious resource. And there certainly has been a lot of stress on the Colorado River Basin this year with low snowpack and a 20-year drought. So we want to be wise as a community about how we're sustaining our water supply and using that water wisely in our landscapes. If you'd like more information about these plants that I've talked about, we will be sending out a link to the recording, so you can definitely have that. Many of the plants that I covered tonight are located in our online plant database at waterwiseplants.org, or you can find them on Plant Select's website, which is plantselect.org. They have a fantastic program, and certainly we are grateful partners for all of their efforts. Now, if you're looking for plants that are not really horticultural introductions, but they're more native plants that we use in the landscape, I would recommend using the U.S. Department of Agriculture's plants database. And you can find that at plants.usda.gov. And that's where you can really narrow down more information about native plants in our area. So those are top 3 resources that I would certainly recommend. I wish you all the best of luck with your landscapes, and thanks again for joining us tonight.